Hi, this is Nick Lalonde, your host of What's Next, making your third act your best act. Today, you're going to hear from Amy Pedersen. Amy sold a company at the age of 35, and the year after, she explains as being one of the hardest of her life. She said she had the highest of highs, but also the lowest of lows, now no longer being the boss and running a company. Amy now serves as the VP of marketing of the same company that acquired her nearly 2 decades later. What stuck out to me in my conversation with Amy is her perspective on retirement. One question that she often asks herself is, why do I have to retire if I'm already doing all the things I want to do? Be sure to listen in when Amy and I discuss one of the blue zones, Okinawa, and their perspective on retirement. I hope that you'll enjoy my conversation with Amy as much as I did. Hey everyone, thank you so much for tuning in to What's Next, making your third act your best act. I'm your host, Nick Lalonde, and today I'm super excited. We have Amy Pedersen joining us. Amy, thank you so much for coming onto the show.
Thank you, Nick. I'm happy to be here and talk about this.
So, Amy, one of the reasons I wanted to bring you on here is you are the only entrepreneur that I've ever met that successfully sold a company, and you sold it 15 years ago. And one of the things that just blew my mind is here we are 15 years later, and you're working with the company that bought your company. That is wild. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think, when you hear the term entrepreneur, you think about serial entrepreneurs that, start something, run it for a while, sell it, go on and do that next thing. And my cycle was a little bit different, although I think the term entrepreneur still very much applies to the way I've managed my career. It just hasn't always been my own thing, right? So I did run my own company for a little over 10 years. I sold it to the company for which I work now, and have had a almost 16-year successful career working with this big company of almost 8,000 people that I never thought I'd be able to work in a large global matrix company. But I have found that my entrepreneurial sense of being finds a lot to work with here.
That's incredible. So, going back to that, so you sell your company. A lot of entrepreneurs, they really struggle with the year after the sale of their business. And PwC did a survey. They found that 3/4 of business owners were profoundly unhappy a year after their sale. Did you notice that, or were you in that 25% where you were loving life?
Oh, for sure. That year after, it was probably the hardest year in my career. And it's funny because it starts with this incredible high, right? You've sold your company. So the thing that a lot of entrepreneurs set out to do, you've done that. You've probably banked some cash, or you've paid off your house, as the case was with us, and we banked money for the kids' college education, right? Does it get better than that? Or so you think. And then you get into this year of working for this company where somebody else calls the shots, or maybe you call the shots, but you have to go to a committee to get things approved, or you have to tell people what your plans were, whereas you were the one in control before, and you're no longer in control. And it was a year of trying to figure that out. Like, who am I in this model? For me, after a year, it clicked, or somewhere in that first year, it clicked that, the entrepreneur in me actually could be successful in a large corporation. It was the curiosity factor for me. And that was the thing about starting my own company. It was, can I do this? Can I do this differently? And just constantly asking and optimizing things. And guess what? Those things actually can suit you well in a large company. And then there's all these other people to learn from. So that kind of learning, if it fed that curiosity factor, I think. And once that clicked for me, then it turned into, well, it went from bad to good. But it took a year. It really does.
And that's really incredible, right? A lot of times when you sell your company, the new company handcuffs you. There's an earnout period where they say, hey, in order to get all the money that we owe you, right, you have to stay on for X amount of time.
Yep.
Uh, are you able to share what that amount of time was?
It was 12 months.
It
Yeah.
was it was 12 months.
It
So
was
you
12 months.
had to be there for 12 months.
I did.
Um, didn't have to, but financially it made sense for you to be there for 12
Exactly.
months. So the
Yeah.
12 months ends. and you no longer have to be there, right? The world is your oyster. You can go out and do whatever you want, but you made the decision to stay there. And that was because you had a light bulb moment. Was it a conversation that you had with someone that had that light bulb moment come on? Was it a just maybe acting in that role for 12 months and seeing that you could still exercise some of that curiosity? What was it?
Good question. So it was probably a little combination of two things. The first was part of that earnout was integrating the business into a larger business, right? So all of the workflows and the ways of working and the process and that all had to still work for a year until the earnout happened, and it had to fit into this larger machine. So while I was getting all that done, I was realizing that, oh, I can do this in a different sort of environment. But at the same time, there's people who are they're watching to see if you do this, right? Because they're going to write you a check at the end of 12 months. And so they were watching what I was doing. And along the way, somebody said, hey, you're really good at this. Would you like to come in and help us operationalize something else, right? And so it was a series of conversations. At the same time, I was kind of flexing my own skills, and I thought, oh, yeah, I could do that. Maybe I could run this for them. Maybe I could do this other thing. And I've been fortunate enough to work in a company where the opportunities keep coming, and so that continued to feed that curiosity factor for me. But yeah, so it wasn't necessarily the aha moment. It was a series of little aha moments, where you're kind of realizing that you're good at things you maybe didn't realize.
One of the things I want to compliment you on is I've counted three now, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you've reinvented yourself a lot. So it sounds like you were this entrepreneur, you were successful, you sold your business, right? Any business owner should get into their business with an exit plan.
Mm.
But then you move into this second role, right? You're in the earn out phase. You're learning how to be an employee of a larger corporation, and then this corporation looks at you and says, "You have a ton of talent. We think that we can move you maybe even to more of an operation capacity and help with some other things." I mean, have you had to continue to reinvent yourself over? Is it 17 years now that you've been with this company? 16 years?
Yep. Yep. 16.
And so do you feel like your job has changed and what you do has changed quite a bit over that 17-year period?
Yeah, it has. And I've been fortunate enough to be in a company where there are opportunities for doing new things. But I think, the foundation of those new things is it's what I always felt I was good at was a big combination of pragmatic and strategic, right? So when you start a company, you have a strategy, you have a vision, but in order to be successful at launching something and then at keeping something running, you've got to be pragmatic. So I wasn't afraid to go into the weeds. And there's a fine line. You don't want to go too far into the weeds, right? Because that can
Yeah,
be problematic. But
yeah.
I always liked that. And I didn't always need to be the one that just had a vision, right? I liked rolling up my sleeves. So what I found in the company that's a lot larger is you needed both. You needed to be able to sell the vision, to the C-suite, et cetera, but then you actually needed to deliver. So that was always my sweet spot, and that appealed to me. It's like, okay, I can do both of these things. It doesn't have to be either or. Um,
Mm.
and that's and there's a little bit too of, putting your ego aside. I mean, you've had control, you've had the vision, and now you're working in a larger corporation where others have vision. And so it's that constant adjustment to say, okay, maybe I can live without all the control. What's enough, or what's interesting enough to keep me here working on something. So yeah, those are, and maybe it's because doing it a little bit earlier in my career, I was able to
Hmm.
kind of, I was still in the learning phase of my career. So being able to kind of have all these opportunities and learn from them, just super grateful for that, and still being able to do that.
How old were you when you sold your business?
35,
Wow. And how old are you today? Are you
58.
58? That's incredible. So sold a business at 35. Kudos to you. There's not many people who can say that and paid off the home and put the kids through college at that time.
Yeah.
So I'm going to walk you through the three acts of life as we see them. The first act of life is all about learning. if we were associating an age with it, I would say it's about 0 to 30 years old. So you graduate college, maybe graduate grad school, you're in your first job for a few years. But then from 30 to 60, I really think it's our second act of life. It's the growing, accumulating, and building phase. So here you are at 35 years old, you sold your business, right? But you're still in that second act of life. But that had to give you a ton of perspective because you made a very tough transition. I mean, emotionally, a business is our baby, right? It can sometimes feel
Right.
like our identity, right? So when I talk to a lot of business owners, most of the time they're right there on the cusp, right? They're in their second act of life, but maybe they're inching closer and closer to that third act of life. And when they do transition from the growing, accumulating, building phase to the third act, which I believe is finding fresh purpose and identity, it can be very emotionally difficult. I know for you that first year was emotionally difficult. In hindsight, if you were talking to a peer today that was making this transition from the second to third act, what advice would you give them to make sure that they have really good success? Because I think it's two parts, right? It's one, making a transition to retirement potentially, but and maybe they're not working, maybe they're working
Right.
beyond this, but I think it's maybe separating that identity as well.
Yeah. Yeah, because I'm still trying to figure out this myself, right? I'm not sure I'm the best at it at giving advice here. But what I would say, because I think it's serving me well, is you don't have to subscribe to any one formula, right? I mean, and I talk to friends who are like, I turned 57 and I'm retiring. That's it. And talk to others who, are going to work as long as they can. And it's like, what is it that Amy wants, right? And the
Yeah.
funny thing is, you think you get to challenge those assumptions too, because we spent a long time, my husband and I, killing ourselves, right, so that we'd have the house paid off, so we could have a vacation, home to go to, that the kids didn't have school debt, that we had this nest egg for when we retired. And I always thought I'd retire early. Well, what does that mean? So then I got to 50 and I was like, well, why would I retire now? I'm still having a fun time here. I love what I'm doing. And then you get to 55 and now I'm at 58 and people say, well, what about 60? And I'm like, what about it? Like, I just don't think I have to. I think I need a financial plan. I need to be responsible in my planning, right? So I, ensure that my kids are set when what happens later on in life. And we don't have to worry about that sort of thing. But other than that, I I don't I don't think I need to subscribe to any one thing. I think that's the beauty, Be
So you mean,
financially responsible for yourself and your partner and your children, and then do what feels right.
yeah, it's not your parents' retirement, right? Looks a little
It's
bit,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Although, my mom is 82 and still
yeah,
works
that's
part
amazing.
time. But so I watch her and, whereas on my husband's side, they were you worked to a certain age, you retire, you get your social
Yeah.
security and whatever pension you had, and, you go out and golf or garden. My mom at 82 still goes out to a part-time job 3 days a week. And I see her and say, it keeps her young, it keeps her moving. The mental acuity is still there. So why stop? Why stop working? And I think when you get to a certain point, as a successful professional, you've got all the things you worried about, right? Like I grew up with that single mom, worried I wouldn't be able to pay bills, right? Or I wouldn't be able to buy the new car or eventually take care of my children. But once you cross
Yep.
those things off the list, it's, do I need to keep worrying about all that stuff? Or at some point, can I just kind of do what feels right? Which might be not retiring. And, people say, oh, I want to travel. Okay, I already do that. I want to play pickleball. Yeah, that's not my thing, but I like tennis and I play a couple times a week. That seems like enough for me, So all the things that I imagined were retirement, I already do. So I'd say I just don't feel, other than the financial stability and taking care of family, I just don't feel the need to subscribe to a certain, formula.
I love what you said about how it's not a one size fits all approach for everyone because that's what retirement culture feels like in my opinion.
Yes.
And so for my wealth management practice, one of the phrases that we came up with was retire the word retire. And
I like
the
that.
and the idea there is, retirement, in my opinion, just as I was talking to a lot of high achievers, it didn't always fit what they were looking for. And so, same thing for you, right? Some people dream of no work, vacationing all the time, playing as much golf as they possibly can. But some people retire and they're bored to tears, and they say, "Hey, we actually liked this whole working thing, and we got a lot of
Right.
mental stimulation and camaraderie and a sense of
Exactly.
purpose."
Right.
And we still were able to travel, and we're still able to do all the
Yeah.
activities we want to do.
Right.
And it sounds like that's the camp you're in. So I want to say I completely agree with you that it should be whatever you want to make it. That's why we like branding it as a third act, right? And
Yeah.
finding fresh purpose and identity, whatever that might be for you. Um, but one of the things that I'm curious about, so 58 today, how long do you think you could do this then? Right? Would you like to be like your mom and maybe working until 82?
Yeah, I could see that. I think the positions I'm in now, you need that sharpness, to kind of operate at a higher level as a senior leader. But so as long as I feel that I'm doing that and the mental acuity is there, I don't see any limits. I'd love to work another 10 years. That doesn't mean I haven't had that thought about, okay, they call me tomorrow and say your job no longer exists. What do you do now? Right. So I think you've got to be, again, that goes back to the pragmatic part of Amy, right?
Yeah.
Is have a plan for that. And hopefully you never have to use it, but have the plan. But other than that, yeah, I mean, 10, 15 years, whatever feels right.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so amazing. Um, so I'm curious. I want to ask you what you think has created retirement culture to maybe make us think that we should retire at a certain age and there's certain things we have to do, right? When I say the golden years, does that mean anything to you?
Um, there's what it should mean. I guess for me, the golden years is, am I happy? Am I healthy? And am I doing something that matters, right? To somebody, to some community or to some organization or to my own family.
Yeah.
That's golden. Golden doesn't have to be, you know, 18 holes on a Wednesday afternoon.
Yeah. Yeah.
Although that's good too, right? I've got a kid who plays golf and is a golf pro, so I'm not dissing golf. That's great. I love going to the range with him and hitting a bucket of balls. That's great for stress, but is that what I want to be doing every day?
Yeah.
No, not yet. Maybe that will change. I don't know.
I try to think long and hard about it by putting on my wealth manager hat and saying, okay, why do people see 65, let's say, as this year that they should retire? Or, oh, I just
Right,
turned 60 and so I need to retire. And
right.
there was a couple things that I was able to come up with. One
Is
is
it
when
having a
social
big, is it having the number? They need to get to a certain number in the bank. Is that what
I
it is?
yes, and I think that's super important. When is enough
Yeah.
enough? But I think knowing when is enough allows you then to maybe make a transition earlier. Maybe it allows you to say, hey, like in your case, um, it sounds like you figured out when is enough, right? You're financially set. You're showing up to work because you want to. You wouldn't do it for free, but you enjoy it, right?
Yep.
So it's, hey, I can retire today at 58, but I choose not to. So that's also knowing when is enough. And that's a very liberating feeling to be able to go to work because you want to, not because you
True.
financially have to be there. But I actually think there's two things that created a retirement culture. And I think there's other things that have perpetuated, but two things that really created mainstream retirement culture. The first is Social Security. So Social Security was founded in 1936, and the Social Security full retirement age was 65 when it first came out. So
Right.
imagine this, our country is telling everyone, hey, 65 is when you should be retired, right? And now we have Medicare. I know full retirement age has gone up for Social Security here in recent years for folks, but Medicare is 65. And then truly the golden years, that was a marketing thing that came out by a company called Sun City. And so they were one of the first companies that created like this amazing 55 and up type of community out in Arizona. And
Yep.
their marketing campaign was a massive hit. And so I just think about these two things. And then even retirement planning software now, the default age is 65. And so I'm sitting here thinking, are we doing a disservice, right, as a industry by perpetuating this age 65? And so be it if that's the age you want to retire and you have legitimate reasons. But we also shouldn't make people feel bad who are 65 who say, I love what I do and I'm living
Right.
my golden years right now and I love to work. And um, I always want to have maybe uh, cycling between work and play, right? I want to be able to
Right.
travel and do the activities and spend time with family, but um, I find so much enjoyment in my work. I mean, what do you think about those things as you're hearing this? A couple of things that have perpetuated retirement culture. Do you think anything?
Yeah, it totally makes sense. And as a marketer, I
Yeah,
probably could have guessed that or should have guessed that, right? But I didn't, Nick. So you're one up on me. But that makes there's a Sun City fairly close to where we live, and so and they do a brilliant job, right? And look, for a lot of people, that sort of community and promise of the golden year, they are living it. Because it's what they want to live in a 55 and up. My husband was like, geez, it looks fabulous. There's something to do every day. And
yeah,
there's activities and no kids. And I was like, well, just because I'm over 55 doesn't mean I don't want to hear the sounds of kids playing and riding their bikes by the house. Like that to me is I want that in my older age, right? So but I get it. And it's so maybe it's not just a marketing message because they do seem to be delivering on the promise that they're marketing. And for a lot of people, it's really great. Again, I just go back to what we were talking about earlier. For me, I just don't feel I have to subscribe to any one specific, formula for retirement. I still have a lot of things I want to do professionally and personally. Like I would love to get more involved with environmental causes, right? I've got one of my kids
mm,
is a wildlife biology major and working in as a profession as a naturalist. I've learned so much from him over the last 4 or 5 years about nature and the environment. I'd love to do grant writing for, organizations looking for funding. That's something, if I did retire, I'd probably look for a job doing that.
mm.
So I think I would just pick up other things where I have interests as opposed to not working.
Have you ever heard of the term ikigai?
What?
It's a Japanese phrase. It's
No,
ikigai. And
no.
so on Netflix, there's actually a documentary that you can watch, and it features all the blue zones. Do you know what a
Okay.
blue zone is?
Yeah, the different climates. Yeah, where people lived longevity.
You got
Yep,
it. So they have the highest per capita of like centurions. So people living to
got it.
100. And uh, Okinawa, that's the Japanese
Japan.
island that they're
Yep.
featuring. So really, really cool. But ikigai is a phrase that comes from this island.
Oh, okay, got it.
And so I think a lot about this for my clients. And I'll give you an example. I have a C-suite exec. She works for a large Fortune 500 company. She is brilliant. I mean, amazing. And ikigai, what it says is you found your ikigai when you're at the intersection of these four things. So the first is what you're good at, what the world needs, what you love, and what you can be paid for.
Ah,
So she's very, very good. We know she's very good because she's compensated well, so she gets paid for this.
yep.
The world absolutely needs what she does. But it's funny when I talk to her and I say, "Hey, what do you think your ikigai is? Right? What do you dream of? Right? If you didn't have to show up to work tomorrow, what would you be doing?" And she said, "Nick, I don't know. Maybe I'd be planning weddings. Maybe I'd be decorating houses, right?"
Yeah,
So what
funny.
she's missing today in her role is what she loves. She's compensated well, gets
Right,
great recognition, right? The world needs it, but she doesn't necessarily love what she's doing today.
got it. Yeah,
And so I'm wondering, it sounds to me like it feels to me like you've found your ikigai and what you're doing today, but if it wasn't this, it would be something else that you would pursue.
right.
And and on this island of Okinawa, they don't necessarily believe in, hey, you just retire and they don't have the Sun City Golden Years mentality. It's hey, you find your ikigai and you continue working, right? As long as it makes sense.
Well, I love that. And, I think you were going to tell me that we all should move to Okinawa, which honestly, that would be fun too, right? And
Yeah.
I've never been there. But yeah, I think like what I always think of my sweet spot. Like, what are the things that, so I'm good at problem solving, I'm good at diplomacy. How do I take those competencies and apply them to a subject matter I'm interested in, right? And if it's then, I am interested in the natural world and environmental causes, that could be something. So maybe I'm working towards that. I'm not quite there yet, but yeah, that would, that now that's an interesting formula for retirement. I could see that, having all those four things come together. Yeah,
Yeah.
I like that.
So the last question that I have for you, this has been amazing, by the way. It's been so fun having you on the show. Um, what I'd like to understand is what are you going to do to make your third act of life your best act of life?
Oh, that's a great question. So I feel like I'm already doing a lot of that. I think the thing that got me to the spot where I love what I'm doing professionally and feel like I've got all the personal components right was letting go of some of the anxiety around what I thought I should be doing. So,
Mm,
you grow up with a single mom who worries about money. You're that mentality of constantly worrying about money. So, okay, can I let go of that? Yes, I can if I do appropriate planning. So and that'll always be work in progress for me, right? Like it's always do we need a new car? I know we can afford the new car, but what's wrong with a used car? So, or maybe that's growing up in New England, I don't know. But kind of getting rid of the what it should be and just defining for me what it is. And oh God, it just comes down to happiness. We only have this one life, right? So you've got to do the things that float your boat. And I find it's everything from driving down the road. This drives my quick story.
yeah.
Drives my kids crazy. If we see a road we haven't been down, I'm like, let's just go for a little adventure and go down the road and see what's at the end. Because you don't know what you're going to find there, right? And sometimes you find a beautiful sunset at the end of a pier, and sometimes you find a dead end, but it's all
Yeah.
about the journey for me. So I feel like as long as I'm having that and I'm going down those little roads where I don't know where they end, then yeah, that's what it's all about.
Wow. I love how you tied it all together today, right? So what I heard is you're very curious, you like going down the roads. Adventure, right, is something that's exciting to you and it sounds like that's what you've needed in order to transition from being an entrepreneur to an employee.
Yeah,
You've needed this sense of
yeah,
adventure and your curiosity, right? You know, that was super important, right? Is to be able to stroke that. And so
right.
congratulations. I
Thanks.
feel like you've had such a successful transition and just have such a fantastic perspective as well. This has been an amazing conversation and we've loved having you on the show.
Thank you for having me. It was actually really fun to talk about this as a topic, Nick.
Well, thank you for your time today, Amy. Hope you have a great day.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.